Zhu Jing placed the prayer beads carefully on his right palm before covering it with his left palm. He said, "Thank you, Benefactor Ji. With these Buddhist prayer beads, Zhu Jing's strength and cultivation base would greatly improve so long as he cultivated well. When the time came, restoring the glory of the Heaven Choice Temple would no longer be a mere pipe dream." Lu Zhou stroked his beard indifferently as he observed the situation at the foot of the mountain. With the Buddhist prayer beads in his hands, Zhu Jing's aura seemed to have changed. Regain formation. Understood. Zhu Jing wore the Buddhist prayer beads around his neck. When his primal qi surged, the Buddhist prayer beads sensed the influx of primal qi and shone faintly. A golden light shot out. Bright mirror. The disciples behind Zhu Jing chanted the sutra along with him. They sounded louder than before. A huge radiant circle appeared below Zhu Jing's feet. A new enhancing energy seal was formed. The magnificent pattern and dazzling golden radiance descended on the ground again. Once again, the strength of the members of the Evil Sky Pavilion was boosted. They felt invigorated. They looked up at the group of monks in the skies. Zhu Honggong said excitedly, "Old monk, I'll treat you to a drink someday." Amitabha. When alcohol was mentioned, Zhu Jing frowned. He was a monk and could not partake in alcohol. Meanwhile, Pan Lishan sent Kong Yuan flying with a strike from his wine gourd. He was trying to hit the back of Kong Yuan's head. However, Kong Yuan was not like the other puppets. He was far superior in terms of strength, cultivation base, and reflexes. Also, he would occasionally summon his fiend's Zen avatar, which made his opponents wary of him. Kong Yuan glared at Zhu Jing, who was hovering in midair. When he saw the prayer beads around Zhu Jing's neck, he seemed furious. He went berserk as he launched a barrage of black palm seals at Pan Lishan. Pan Lishan's cultivation base had not recovered yet. He barely managed to hold Kong Yuan down with his wine gourd. He could not fight directly against Kong Yuan. Under these circumstances, he could only dodge. Boom, boom, boom. Black palm seals sailed in the air, and Pan Lishan continued to dodge to the best of his abilities. "Old Pan, are you alright?" Leng Luo maneuvered his way through the horde of puppets with his Dao invisibility technique. Just as a dozen of puppets charged at Pan Lishan, whiz, a 100-foot avatar pushed him away. Pan Lishan replied, "I can manage." The bright mirror extended toward them. It immediately bolstered Pan Lishan's spirits. His Danshan sea of qi felt much more comfortable as well. For a time, the ground was strewn with corpses. Lu Zhou stood on Bayan's back as he surveyed the area before him. Then, he looked at the forest in the distance. Kong Yuan had emerged from that part of the forest. Lu Zhou concluded Ba Ma should be hiding inside a formation in that forest as he maintained control over the puppets. With the support of Bright Mirror, the Evil Sky Pavilion gained the upper hand. The puppets' movements were clearly slower. Meanwhile, little Yuanair picked up her pace. With her 10-foot-tall avatar, she crashed through the puppets and sent them flying with her kicks. She blew raspberries at them. "Little junior sister, why are you pulling faces at them? It's not like they can understand you." Ming Shi Yin shot past little Yuanair. Little Yuanair said, "I just felt like it." Up above, the unbroken sutra chant resounded throughout the mountain. Beyond the trees, inside the witchcraft formation, Ba Ma cursed in a low voice. "Bald donkey." With a wave of his right hand, a purple radiant circle shot toward Zhang Yuanshan. Zhang Yuanshan's eyes widened. With a deep voice, Ba Ma said, "Go and kill them all." Zhang Yuanshan left Ba Ma and charged at the members of the Evil Sky Pavilion. The current Zhang Yuanshan was different from when he was alive. Terrifying tentacles shot out from his arms as he lunged toward little Yuanair, who was closest to him. "Trying to capture me? Dream on." 7 stars cloud-treading steps. Little Yuanair retreated. Zhang Yuanshan stretched his arms out. His voice sounded vile and cold as he said, "You can't get away." Nirvana Sash. Little Yuanair's Nirvana Sash danced in the air. Shrouded in energy, it positioned itself before her. At the same time, Duan Musheng's 1,000 waves appeared to help her. Boom, boom, boom. 1,000 spear shadows struck Zhang Yuanshan's chest. The heaven-grade weapon struck the same spot, causing a dent. He retreated. "Thank you, third senior brother." Little Yuanair flung her Nirvana Sash out and repelled the puppets around her. When the puppets reeled back, several powerful energy arrows came from above the evil sky pavilion and hit the backs of their heads. The puppets fell and no longer moved. Little Yuanair raised her thumb in the general direction of the top of the evil sky pavilion. Sister Yuxing has some skills. Hua Yuxing smiled despite herself after receiving the compliment. She felt much more confident now. Zhang Yuanshan had been boosted after all. He was an 8-leaf expert after all. It was already a commendable feat for Duan Musheng to keep him at bay. As expected, Zhang Yuanshan leaped to the side in a different direction and flew towards Zhu Jing in the air. Zhu Jing frowned. Ward Mudra, Golden Buddha body. When Zhang Yuanshan lunged at Zhu Jing again, he made a shocking move. He hit his Sea of Qi with his palms. This is bad. Retreat. Zhu Jing and his disciples retreated in a square formation in the air with his golden body and Ward Mudra. For this reason, the bright mirror was deactivated. Self-destruct. This was similar to what Leng Luo experienced when he faced the 10 shamans. He snorted and pushed away from the ground, leaving several afterimages in his wake. I'll be your opponent. Zhang Yuanshan hit his own Sea of Qi again. Leng Luo activated his avatar at this moment as well and positioned himself between Zhu Jing and the monks. Boom! With Zhang Yuanshan at the epicenter, a blue explosion rippled out as a purple mist hung in the air and descended on the surroundings. Whiz! Whiz! The evil sky pavilion disciples at the foot of the mountain activated their avatars and kept the purple mist at bay. Ba Ma swept his gaze across the members of the evil sky pavilion and their shining heaven-grade weapons. Duan Musheng wielded the Overlord spear. Xiao Yue wielded her sky dagger with a backhand grip. Little Yuanair had her Nirvana sash wrapped around herself. Zhu Honggong wore his boxing gloves. Pan Lishan's gourd bottle was circling around him. Hua Yuxing was shooting with her bow from afar. What an ostentatious and luxurious lineup. Such opponents should be killed while they were still inside the cradle. Ba Ma suppressed his excitement as best he could. These future elites would all die by his hands today. With the purple mist descended on the land, Ba Ma extended his arms and looked up at the skies. With a trembling voice, he said, "For Lu Lan, junior sister, our sacrifices were worth it." The purple mist obscured Leng Luo's vision. He used his 8-leaf avatar to block the backlash from Zhang Yuanshan's self-destruction. He immediately recalled his avatar as he reeled back. Zhu Jing and his disciples continued to retreat in a square formation. The bright mirror was shattered by the impact. Meanwhile, Pan Lishan and the monk, Kong Yuan, climbed even higher as they fought. The purple mist surrounded them. Kong Yuan was unaffected. He suddenly lunged. Pan Lishan realized things were not looking good and flipped his body immediately. Bam! 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 Old Pan! Elder Pan! Kong Yuan growled and dove. His black fiend Zen reappeared. They had not witnessed Yu Shangrong slicing the fiend Zen with his sword before. If they did, they would have been shocked by Yu Shangrong's terrifying strength. However, the fiend Zen that should have been destroyed by the sword had made a comeback. It seemed like the dead were no longer staying dead. The fiend Zen avatar's black figure crashed toward Pan Lishan. Thousand Catty's defense. A round barrier emerged from the gourd bottle in Pan Lishan's hand. Bam! The fiend Zen crashed into the barrier. Pan Lishan fell, his blood essence boiled, and his old face flushed from the effort. Thud! Pan Lishan fell to the ground. The others from the evil sky pavilion quickly gathered around him. They formed a circle around Pan Lishan. What is this mist? Ming Shi Yin asked. Blood curse. Leng Luo said. Blood curse. Blood essence from a powerful cultivator is mixed with that of the spellcasters to cast this spell. If we're hit by the blood curse, we won't be able to move anymore. Leng Luo said grimly. What a pain. A scornful expression appeared on Ming Shi Yin's face. We can only hold it off with our energies. Without the enhancement from the bright mirror, their primal chi seemed to be depleting more quickly. After Pan Lishan was repelled, Kong Yuan turned toward Zhu Jing and his disciples who were still in a square formation. His face, which was devoid of blood and expression, was terrifying. With his black avatar, he charged toward Zhu Jing and the others. Lu Zhou frowned. He did not think that it was worth it to use a deadly strike card on a target who was already dead. He finally said, "Stand back." Initially, Lu Zhou planned to wait for Ba Ma to appear before killing Ba Ma with a deadly strike card. However, after he considered the current situation, he realized Ba Ma's preparation had exceeded his expectations. This was not as simple as forfeiting 200 years of life. Ba Ma had practically given all his life for these puppets. If another 8-leaf puppet were to appear, there was no doubt that Ba Ma had already given his life. Although Kong Yuan was nothing but a corpse now, his affinity with the prayer beads still existed. He seemed to be able to sense the prayer beads' location as he charged at Zhu Jing and the others. His huge black avatar resembled a meteor in the air. Leng Luo retreated with Zhu Jing and the others. They landed behind the boulder. The person who stood before them was none other than Lu Zhou, who looked calm and indifferent since the beginning. They wondered what method the pavilion master to block the terrifying Fiend Zen attack. Regardless, they could only trust him. Everyone looked up at Kong Yuan. Lu Zhou flipped his wizened hand. The item that materialized in his hand was not a deadly strike card. Instead, it was unnamed. Unnamed was emitting a faint blue and purple light. It was the Heavenly Writing Scroll's extraordinary power. The instant the Black Fiend Zen avatar was upon him, he activated the power of past lives. Lu Zhou swung his sword forcefully. From the lower left corner, Unnamed drew a diagonal line to the upper right corner. Zing! It was a simple and direct move, like a mere mortal swinging his arm. However, the air seemed to freeze over. To everyone's surprise, the Black Fiend Zen avatar cracked as though it was as fragile as a sheet of paper. If the Sword Devil, Yu Shangrong, had witnessed this, what would his thoughts be? He only managed to cut the Fiend Zen avatar down after unleashing all his strength and techniques. And yet, his master cleaved it in two with just a casual swing of his hand. How was this even logical? When the avatar disintegrated, the cultivator would usually be heavily injured as well. Kong Yuan was already dead. When his avatar was sliced open, black power leaked out as he reeled back. However, shortly after, he lunged at Lu Zhou again. A corpse had nothing to fear. Lu Zhou said disapprovingly, how futile, originating from nothing, but coming from everything, living in samsara. I'll send you into samsara with this strike. Kong Yuan shot toward them. He attempted to tackle the frail-looking old man with his tough body. BZZT. The purple mist seemed to freeze in the air. Suddenly, a purple mist shot out from the forest. A sound wave rolled out into the surroundings. Restriction. The people of the evil sky pavilion were shocked. They looked at the mist around them. The mist formed a huge net that cut off all their possible routes. The puppets on land did not relent in their attempts to attack them. Ba Ma finally appeared. I'll exchange my life for a shackle from which no being will be able to escape from. Die. Kong Yuan was upon Lu Zhou. Pavilion Master, look out! Hua Woodao wanted to rush over and activate his 6 compatible seal. But he was too late. Lu Zhou glanced at Ba Ma, who was hovering above the scene. He nodded in satisfaction. Finally, he shows himself. At this moment, Lu Zhou chose to use an impeccable card. This time, the Buddha Golden Body did not appear. Instead, a 10 script 6 compatible seal appeared. He stood on the 8 trigrams, and the 10 scripts on his body shot out swiftly as they expanded. Heaven, earth, life, death, water, fire, being, non-being, and separation. Bam! The purple mist that initially shrouded the evil sky pavilion was instantly scattered by the terrifying 10 script 6 compatible seal. Hua Woodao looked up, speechless. Was this still his 6 compatible seal? Was this the Taoist seal that he studied and created? Each script was an individual attack. Apart from the round shield, there were energy seals formed by the 10 scripts that struck at Kong Yuan precisely. The 10 scripts spun and landed 10 consecutive strikes. Boom, boom, boom. Kong Yuan managed to hold his own when the first 3 scripts struck him. However, when the 4th to the 6th script hit him, he fell backward. When the 9th script struck, his body was blown up into pieces. By the 10th strike, his ashes had already scattered in the air. Perhaps, Lu Zhou was lucky. Usually, the impeccable cards were more defense-oriented. Kong Yuan, who had been on collision course with the 10 scripts, finally died. If I can kill you once, I can kill you twice. A shocked expression appeared on Ba Ma's face. You're not affected by the restriction. Lu Zhou glanced at the purple mist. He did not waste words with Ba Ma. He brought his left hand up, and a deadly strike card appeared in his palm. A miniature vortex spun in an anti-clockwise direction. I've been waiting for you. Lu Zhou had never loathed witchcraft as much as he did today. He was filled with so much loathing that he did not even want to waste another word. Ba Ma widened his eyes. He sensed the alarming and terrifying power in Lu Zhou's palm. He said hoarsely, "In that case, let's die together." Instead of retreating, he advanced. He charged toward Lu Zhou with the purple mist. Lu Zhou did not fear Ba Ma. Up until now, he had not activated his critical block card. Even without using the heavenly writing's powers, Ba Ma could not do anything against him. However, Ba Ma, naturally, had no way of knowing that his enemy was a terrifying individual who was armed with all kinds of trump cards. 10 seconds passed in a blink of an eye. The 10 script 6 compatible seal vanished. The deadly strike card replaced the 6 compatible seal and launched forward. The Soul Diamond Seal, the Great Blitz Treasure Seal, the Magic Gourd Seal, the Sun Moon Seal. These seals corresponded with the power, energy, harmony, healing, intuition, awareness, dimension, creation, and absoluteness. The packed scripts surrounded the Great Seal. The others held their breaths at the sight of this. Although this was the second time they saw Lu Zhou unleashing this skill, they were still in awe and disbelief. One of the great palm seals of the Taoist sect collided with Ba Ma like a normal attack. Boom, boom, boom. Similar to Kong Yuan, Ba Ma resisted obstinately. When the 8th palm seal struck his body, something different happened. The mist around him scattered. His face was illuminated by the radiance of the 9 cuts hand seal. At this moment, everyone saw Ba Ma's appearance. From his forehead to his chin, every inch of his face was covered in cuts. The edges of his eyes had been cut as well. Blood was trickling out of his 7 orifices. At this moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped. Ding! Killed a target. Reward. 2.000 merit points. When he heard this notification, Lu Zhou knew that Ba Ma was dead. However, Ba Ma had cultivated his own body to continue attacking even after his death. Similar to his puppets, Lu Zhou thought about using the Great Seal of Fearlessness to grind Ba Ma into dust just to tie up loose ends. When the 9th palm seal struck his heart, Ba Ma's eyes were filled with incredulity. However, he was no longer breathing. A blood-cultivated body. Leng Luo reminded Lu Zhou. Lu Zhou shook his head. He stepped forward and said confidently, "If I can slice you once, I can slice you again." Who was an expert? Lu Zhou gave the others an earnest demonstration of what it meant to be an expert. Leng Luo and Pan Lishan had trouble keeping Kong Yuan at bay. However, Kong Yuan seemed so defenseless before Lu Zhou. They suddenly remembered a question in their minds. Everyone had been talking about how the patriarch of the evil Sky Pavilion's great limit was at hand. Every year, they guessed and they probed. But they were never right. Every time, they would find an excuse to attack. The excuse was the truth that everyone believed in, the 1.000-year limit. Under ordinary circumstances, a cultivator's cultivation base would deteriorate rapidly in the final 100 years of their lives. How did the pavilion master manage to maintain his cultivation base? There was another possibility. The evil Sky Pavilion's patriarch had truly found a way to attain the 9-leaf stage. If they had not seen this with their own eyes, they would never believe that the evil Sky Pavilion's master was capable of such a terrifying display of power. The 3 men of the Old Age Pavilion thought of the same phrase at the same time. The villains had returned to his peak. Perhaps, at the pavilion master's level, his control over his powers had returned to his natural state. There was no grand execution or flashy display of energy bursts. Just like before, when Ba Ma charged toward Lu Zhou, he drew unnamed across Ba Ma's body, just like what he told Yu Shangrong, if he wanted to kill his opponent. All he had to do was to swing his sword with force alone. Unnamed's sharpness exceeded the understanding of the people gathered present on the scene. Crack! A sound that resembled bamboo plants being hacked off rang in the air. It was crisp and satisfying. The satisfaction they felt could hardly be put into words. The people of the evil Sky Pavilion felt, for the first time, just how wonderful this cracking sound was. It was so wonderful that the weights immediately lifted from their shoulders. The witchcraft genius of Lu Lan, Ba Ma, had died. The surroundings of the evil sky pavilion fell silent. Lu Zhou looked at the blood-cultivated body on the boulder and felt no sympathy. Witchcraft had light and dark sides. Unfortunately, Ba Ma chose the path of darkness. Your amazing might knows no bounds. Master, my horizons have been widened. Zhu Honggong was the first to break the silence. The others looked at Zhu Honggong. Ah, can't help it. Can't help it. Zhu Honggong scratched his head. When he did that, he cried out in pain. The chiseled surface of the boxing gloves proved to be hazardous. This was not the time for flattery. After all, they could still see the puppets moving forward, albeit at a slow pace. Without the spellcaster controlling them, the puppets surrounded them like robots. There were too many of them. They had shocking defenses as well. If they were to kill the puppets one by one, who knew how long it would take? Lu Zhou looked at the purple mist in the sky and the avatar under him. He stroked his beard and said, "Wizard, roar, wizard," standing on auspicious clouds and bathed in auspicious chi, flew above the purple mist. The scene that unfolded during the battle with the 10 shamans was reenacted. Hua Wudao widened his eyes. He looked at Wizard scattering its auspicious chi. The purple mist was being pushed down by the auspicious chi until it was on the ground. Without the support from the purple mist, the puppets fell to the ground. The process took quite a while. When the purple mist was completely gone, and all of the puppets had dropped to the ground, Wizard let out a long howl, as though it knew it had completed its mission. It flew back and vanished into the darkness. Lu Zhou noticed that Wizard's status was shown as resting on the dashboard. He guessed that it would last 7 days again. The others looked in the direction where Wizard vanished. They were slightly stunned. They rubbed their eyes. Isn't this too great of a prank? Why wasn't this done sooner? Naturally, Lu Zhou had his own intentions. If he unleashed Wizard, Ba Ma would most likely turn tail and run. Taking care of Ba Ma before these puppets was the best course of action. As he looked at the puppets on the ground, he shook his head. He had lost a lot in this battle. There were no rewards of merit points, and he brought much trouble upon himself. That was not all. The purple mist had absorbed half of the plants' lifespans in the area. Many trees were now dried and withered. Zhu Jing took a few steps forward and slowly descended to the ground. He looked at the corpses strewn on the ground and sighed. He straightened his palm and said, "Amitabha, old monk, what's there to be Amitabha-ing about?" Zhu Honggong was creeped out by the bodies. They were controlled by Ba Ma and had no quarrels with me while they were still of this world. All of this is that grand shaman's mistake. Zhu Honggong nodded. I think you have a point. Zhu Jing turned around in midair, faced Lu Zhou, and said, "Benefactor Ji, virtue lies in all living things. Everything comes in a circle in its own time. I'm willing to set up an altar at the foot of the mountain to help these souls find peace. Please grant your permission, benefactor." Lu Zhou surveyed the surroundings. The dead deserved respect. In the end, he replied, "All right, thank you, benefactor." Zhu Jing straightened up and said in a clear voice, "On behalf of the deceased, I thank all the benefactors here. Old monk, you're something else. I'll leave them to you. Then, it is but my duty." Ming Shi Yin looked at Zhu Jing and said, "You're the first monk whom I can actually tolerate." Lu Zhou returned to the evil sky pavilion. Safe journey, pavilion master. Safe journey, master. When Lu Zhou was finally out of sight, the others sighed with relief. "Old Pan, are you alright?" Leng Luo noticed Pan Lishan's exhausted state. "I won't die from this." Pan Lishan gripped his wine gourd tightly. He coughed twice before he rose to his feet. Pan Zheng flew down to support Pan Lishan. He said, "Don't push yourself too hard when your cultivation base isn't restored yet." Pan Lishan was not angered by this. He laughed. However, in many circumstances, you can only know if you're capable of surviving an ordeal when you push yourself to the limit. Don't try to fill my head with wild arguments. I'll help you get back. The other disciples looked on as Pan Lishan and Pan Zheng flew back to the evil sky pavilion. At this moment, Hua Yuxing descended from above the sky of evil sky pavilion. She recalled her falling moon bow and shook her head. She had much work to do. Throughout that battle, she had only killed a limited number of puppets. Hua Wudao walked up to her and said, "Don't give up. Those were the pavilion master's direct disciples. They can't be compared to the conventional standard of talent." Oh. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou returned to the eastern pavilion. The two swings of his sword did not seem to contain great power. But it did deplete 2/3 of his extraordinary power. After all, the power was capable of besting an 8-leaf opponent. Moreover, this was on top of wielding Unnamed. He flipped his palm. Unnamed hovered above his hand. The Black Rune. Lu Zhou remembered the scene in the Mausoleum of Swords. Unnamed had absorbed all of the demon sword's black runes and converted them to its own energy. Was it sharpened because of this? With a thought, Unnamed turned into a hammer. It was not covered in runes when it took the shape of other weapons. He put Unnamed away. Lu Zhou cleared his mind of distracting thoughts. He sat with his legs crossed and entered his heavenly writings meditation state. This time, he used a deadly strike card and an impeccable card. The number of item cards he had was decreasing. Judging by the current prices, he would run out of cards sooner or later. All he could rely on was the extraordinary power. He had to think of a way to improve his cultivation base. Early the next morning, Lu Zhou had just opened his eyes when a voice reached him from the other side of the door. "Master, Zhu Jing requests an audience." All right, Lu Zhou stood up and gauged his extraordinary power. It had merely increased a little after a night's worth of meditation. He was slightly worried about the pace of his meditation. Could this have something to do with the fourth open heavenly writing scroll? Would the pace improve with every open scroll? However, he did not dwell upon this. Instead, he left the eastern pavilion. He stood outside the great hall and saw a lively scene. A crowd was gathered between the two majestic stone pillars outside the great hall. They wore monks' robes. Golden Court Mountain was not a small mountain. There were several thousand square meters before the great hall. However, it was completely occupied by the monks. What is this about? The great hall faced the east, so the morning sun shone on the evil sky pavilion. Lu Zhou walked slowly toward them. Zhu Jing emerged from the crowd, straightened a palm, and said, "Amitabha." Lu Zhou was puzzled. What are all these monks doing here? Apart from Zhou Jifeng and Pan Zheng, his disciples and the other old men were not present on the scene. "Greetings, Benefactor Ji." The monks bowed in unison. Lu Zhou remained silent as he waited for Zhu Jing's explanation. Zhu Jing said, "The Heaven Choice Temple has recruited 2,000 new disciples. I've called them over as reinforcements. But the battle had already ended when they arrived. However, they arrived just in time to help with the clearing of the corpses. We're fortunate to have accomplished what was entrusted to us. The foot of the mountain is now cleared." Lu Zhou nodded when he heard this. He was pleased. It was not a bad thing to have them help out around these parts. He replied curtly, "I see." Zhu Jing seemed embarrassed as he said, "However, many trees and plants near the foot of the mountain are half withered. I've tried the merciful ark of salvation, but it did not help." The withering of the plants was within Lu Zhou's expectations. Fortunately, the purple mist had been quickly dispersed. Otherwise, all the plants on Golden Court Mountain would wither and the mountain would be barren. He was deep in thoughts at this moment. He finally decided to restore the barrier should the chance presented itself. Without the barrier, the defenses of Golden Court Mountain were too weak. Zhu Jing said, "Benefactor Ji, the Buddhist prayer beads are too precious of a gift. I can't take it without earning it. Kindly take it back, Benefactor Ji." He removed the prayer beads from around his neck and respectfully presented them to Lu Zhou with both hands. Lu Zhou glanced at the Buddhist prayer beads. Was any of his disciples thinking of becoming a monk? Who should I give this to if not a monk? Finally, he said, "I've never liked monks, but your performance is worthy of praise. Since I've given you the prayer beads, I won't take them back." Zhu Jing was slightly taken aback by this. When he received the prayer beads yesterday, he thought it was a ploy by the evil sky pavilion to temporarily bribe them for their help. He did not expect to keep it. When he heard Lu Zhou's words, a contrite expression appeared on his face. His benefactor had sincerely offered him a gift. And yet, he had questioned the benefactor's motives. "I'm ashamed of myself. Was this the bearing and thoughts worthy of an erudite monk?" Zhu Jing was so ashamed he wished the ground would open up and swallow him. Lu Zhou, who did not spare any thoughts to his matter, was rather speechless when he looked at Zhu Jing. He finally understood why his disciples greatly disliked those on the noble path. The people on the noble path assumed too much and thought too highly of themselves. I'm just giving you the prayer beads because you've been of help to me. Moreover, the prayer beads aren't worth much. To each his own. Zhu Jing wore the prayer beads around his neck. He lifted his monk robes and kowtowed piously. On behalf of the Heaven Choice Temple, I thank you, Benefactor Ji. Zhu Jing's disciples, naturally, could not stand by idly when their master was kowtowing. They kowtowed at Lu Zhou as well. Ding! Received a genuine kowtow from 1.020 individuals. Reward: 10.200 merit points. Lu Zhou was surprised to hear this notification. He suddenly remembered that Zhu Jing mentioned something about the Heaven Choice Temple having many new disciples. A repeated kowtow would not give him any points. The arrival of 1.020 new disciples was a pleasant surprise. Lu Zhou suddenly felt that it was a good decision to have given the Buddhist prayer beads to Zhu Jing. However, the Heaven Choice Temple was reborn with the Evil Sky Pavilion's help and was different from the other sects. He could not possibly expect the others to kowtow at him genuinely just because he gave them something. Over the next 2 weeks, Zhu Jing insisted on staying to show his gratitude. He thoroughly cleaned the Evil Sky Pavilion, apart from the withered plants at the foot of the mountain, which they could not do anything about. Everything was tidied up by the monks. Even the steps were spotless. Early one day, Lu Zhou had just finished meditating on the heavenly writing scrolls. At this moment, Ming Shi Yin entered the Eastern Pavilion with a letter in his hand. He bowed, clearly irritable, as he said, "Master, a letter from Jiang Aijian." Lu Zhou could sense the annoyance in Ming Shi Yin's tone, but he did pay him any mind. "Read it." Ming Shi Yin opened the letter and read, "Old Senior, has the Evil Sky Pavilion been trampled by a minor witchcraft cultivator? What's the situation? The major sects of the cultivation world are talking about how half of Golden Court Mountain withered overnight. This isn't good news." When he read this, Ming Shi Yin muttered to himself, "Excuse me, we crushed them. Go on." Lu Zhou's voice remained calm. Ming Shi Yin did not dally. He continued to read aloud. "I must remind you that you should be wary of the alliances between the sects on the noble path. Also, I have an important piece of information. Ba Ma's death has reached Lulan. The royals of Lulan are infuriated. They sent several hundred cultivators to Ruli Nation for an alliance. Where do you think they're headed? I'll clobber this long-winded fellow the next time I see him." Ming Shi Yin thought to himself before he continued to read the letter. They went to Liang province. Coincidentally, your 1st and 7th disciples are headed north. Si Wuya's information network in Great Yan is wider than mine. But in the other tribes and Lulan, he's no match for me. Ha ha ha. After reading that, Ming Shi Yin said, "Master, shall we summon Jiang Aijian here?" I don't think he made himself very clear. No need. Lu Zhou walked out of the Eastern Pavilion. He stroked his beard, lost in thoughts. Great Yan had defeated Lu Lan many times. In the recent exchange, Lu Lan even had to offer one of their princesses for a marriage alliance. The marriage alliance was, naturally, a good thing. However, nobody expected that Mo Li would go so far as to turn into a woman and become the consort of Lu Huan. The second prince, clearly, she had planned to infiltrate Great Yan and take it down from inside. Now that Mo Li and Ba Ma were dead, how could Lu Lan not be furious? Back then, Ji Tiandao had lived through the period where Great Yan was in conflict with the other tribes. However, he rarely involved himself in those affairs. "Master, I suspect that Lu Lan and Ruli are trying to invade Liang province with this opportunity. Jiang Aijian is a prince. After all, this is their matter," Ming Shi Yin said. After Lu Gu ascended the throne, he neglected to manage the empire. Even when the second prince died, he didn't make a move. "I don't think things are as simple as you think they are." Lu Zhou replied, "If that's the case, isn't eldest senior brother just exposing his back to his enemies?" Ming Shi Yin asked. Lu Zhou glanced at him. Upon hearing that, Ming Shi Yin realized he had said the wrong thing. He hastily added, "Oh, right, he deserves it. If they're defeated, It'll be the perfect opportunity to capture and interrogate them. Are you trying to decide my matters for me? Lu Zhou asked. I dare not. Lu Zhou no longer spoke. He decided to just go with the flow. Clearly, there was something amiss with how Lu Gu seemed unbothered with the affairs of the world. In that case, what was the imperial family waiting for? Send word to Jiang Aijian. Tell him to investigate the imperial family's research on the nine-leaf stage. Yes, master. Tell him that I'll take back Dragonsong and the demon's sword if he refuses to cooperate. That's great. Ah, yes, master. Ming Shiyin bowed. Lu Zhou nodded and said, I'll check on Pan Lishan and Leng Luo. I'll leave the rest to you. If there's nothing urgent, there's no need to report to me. Yes, master. Ming Shiyin bowed again. On Brackish Mountain in the snow-covered northern borders, the cold spring wind blew. And yet, everything was quiet in the Melilot graveyard. It remained unaffected by the roaring of the wind. Whiz! Yu Shangrong summoned a miniature 100 Tribulations Insight avatar on his palm. He shook his head as he looked at it. 2/3 of the golden lotus was now covered in purple spots. He could early feel his avatar had lost more than half of its strength. Moreover, the purple spots were still continuing to spread. Yu Shangrong sighed softly. This is my fate. I started with the Melilot. And I'll end with the Melilot. Brackish Mountain was usually shrouded in darkness. Without knowing when it began, it never stopped snowing as well. In a snowy land that had lost sunlight along with the biting cold, it was difficult for people to be compelled by the scenery. The cold wind entered the graveyard through the only opening on the ceiling. It howled like a war horn. At the same time, it sounded as though the bones in the Melilot graveyard were lamenting their fates and lives that were filled with regrets. Everyone in the nobleman nation sought longevity. They wanted to go against the heavens, change their fates, and break the bonds of their shackles. Now, everything laid in ruins. Yu Shangrong sometimes wondered why the heavens treated them differently when they were all humans. He left this place in his youth to change his fate. With his mortal legs, he traversed the lands, ventured through dangerous forests, and cultivated. He was finally at the peak of human cultivation. He would be lying if he said that he did not feel wronged in the slightest. Woo! The wind's howling intensified. It pulled Yu Shangrong back from his thoughts. He rose to his feet and surveyed his surroundings. He looked at the ingenious design of the graveyard and shook his head. He looked at the wall on which the word, longevity, was carved. He felt slightly emotional. Clack! With a crisp sound, the characters moved. A contraption. Several dozen projectiles shot from the walls to the sides. Yu Shangrong did not even have to use his primal chi. He only needed his protective energy to keep the projectiles at bay. They were weak projectiles. They were arrowheads forged by the hands of men. They were refined, solid, compact, and exquisite. They were truly works of art. And yet, they could do nothing against cultivators. The projectiles fell harmlessly to the ground. A hidden bracket appeared on the wall. Without hesitation, Yu Shangrong pressed it. The second stone door slowly slid open, revealing a round space. The lighting in this room was better than the previous one. However, the howling of the wind was still audible. His ears were growing accustomed to the humming sound. There was a round stone table in the center of the round room. A brocade box rested on the table. The box was surrounded by withered melilots. Perhaps it was due to the passing of time. The melilots only left behind vague outlines. The physical bodies had rotted away long ago. Yu Shangrong waved his sleeve softly. The melilots and dust scattered. He looked at the brocade box. Petals of a melilot decorated the lid of the box. He did not think much about it and waved his arm again. Click! The brocaded box opened, revealing several books and pills. Yu Shangrong picked the books up and casually flipped through them. There was nothing special about the books. They were the cultivation methods of the Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian sects. Indeed, they would be considered treasures for ordinary people. However, for Yu Shangrong, they were nothing but a pile of useless paper. He would not even deign to look at him twice. Some primal chi surged in his palm, and the books were reduced to ashes. As for the pills, after all this time, their effects had certainly deteriorated. Judging from the shapes of the pills, these pills should have been low-grade longevity pills. Like the books, they were not much use to him. These were indeed precious items to the people of the nobleman country in the past. He did not expect them to be placed inside the Melilot graveyard. Did nobody cultivate or consume these? Yu Shangrong sighed softly and smacked his palm down. Bam! The brocade box fell to the ground. Suddenly, a strange item that looked like a painting fell from the bottom of the brocade box. Yu Shangrong shifted his gaze toward the painting. To be more precise, it was a sheet of paper with various symbols. He suddenly recalled the paper and mission his master entrusted to him. The symbols on the paper he was given seemed to match those on this sheet of paper. He took out the paper that his master had given and laid it next to the sheet of paper to compare them. Many of the symbols were similar. There was a handful that was complete matches. There were more symbols on the sheet he found. Clearly, the contents on the two sheets of paper were different, but they had been written in the same style. Does this belong to master? Yu Shangrong was curious. Why was his master's possession here? He did not think that the other items were precious, but he guessed this sheet had to be very precious. Yu Shangrong studied the symbols on the paper, but he could not understand any of them. In the end, he gave up trying to make sense of it. Then, he folded it carefully and placed it inside his pocket. The fact that it survived the years quietly inside this box without being affected by the weather proved that the material of this sheet of paper was extraordinary as well. After that, Yu Shangrong turned to look at the stone door. Should I head back? Then, he walked out of the second stone door. The howling of the wind intensified. Yu Shangrong felt that something was amiss. He raised a hand, and his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar appeared. His golden lotus was still tainted by the purple curse. Won't it go away? Yu Shangrong frowned slightly. If his avatar was fine, he would be able to return to the evil sky pavilion in 7 days if he flew at full speed. However, at the moment, he was sure that his avatar would fall apart halfway through his journey. There were many beasts in the wilderness. He would become their prey if he was not careful. Without his avatar, his cultivation base was only equivalent to a 9-fold body tempering cultivator. He could handle manual labor, but he could not hasten his journey and pass through dangerous forests. He did not think that he could count on having the same luck he had in his youth. When he thought about this, Yu Shangrong stopped. He did not intend to break the door. He crossed his legs and sat down. Then, he circulated his primal chi to suppress the erosion of the purple curse. He adjusted his breathing as he entered a meditative state. The entire day passed in just a blink of an eye. If it were not for the source of light from the Melilot graveyard ceiling, it would be difficult to tell that it was already bright outside. Yu Shangrong summoned his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar again. Indeed, the spread of the purple spots had slowed. However, this suppression was merely delaying the spread of this poison. It was not a cure. He could not allow this to drag on. Yu Shangrong had been searching for a way to overcome this throughout the night. Yet, he could not stop the erosion of this curse. As the sword devil who remained undefeatable in the cultivation world over the years, this was his first time feeling powerless and helpless. Yu Shangrong stood up and passed through the second stone door. He sat down with his legs crossed again to adjust his breathing while he tried to come up with something. On the 5th day, Yu Shangrong summoned his avatar again. The golden lotus of his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar was almost completely tainted. Perhaps, it was due to the pressure of his golden lotus's imminent destruction by the curse. A sudden and terrifying thought came to Yu Shangrong's mind unbidden. Sever the golden lotus. He knew the consequences of that act. This was because he did the exact same thing to countless other avatars with his longevity sword before. Fiend Zen avatars, Taoist avatars, Confucian heavenly energy avatars, Buddha golden bodies. Regardless of the avatar, when they were cut by a heaven-grade weapon, the cultivator would be gravely injured. Cutting off his golden lotus was akin to committing suicide. Yu Shangrong was surprised to find his fingers trembling. He tightened his grip on the scabbard of the longevity sword. The sword devil of the generation was clearly nervous. Yu Shangrong maintained this posture without moving. If this had happened to anyone, they would consider their options carefully. Put aside the possibilities of dying. If one were told to sever one's leg to continue living, would one be brave enough to do it? At this moment, Yu Shangrong was facing such a choice. Although it was not as cruel as severing his legs, Severing the golden lotus was just as difficult to accept. For cultivators, their cultivation base was their life. Without their cultivation base, they would be a good for nothing. It was no different from being dead. Night fell. There was no light at all inside the Melilot graveyard. Yu Shangrong held his scabbard. He occasionally lifted the longevity sword with his thumb. The sound of the longevity sword sliding against the scabbard was exceptionally clear and piercing at this moment. It sounded like a butcher was sharpening his knife. This went on for nearly an entire night. When the dim light from above shone into the graveyard, Yu Shangrong's thumb had stilled. There was a predetermined end to everything. Perhaps, this ending had been written in stone since the day he left Brackish Mountain in his youth. Was death terrifying? He would die without his cultivation base. Sooner or later, anyway. Zing! Yu Shangrong lifted the longevity sword forcefully with his thumb. With a force greater than before, his longevity sword shot into the air. Yu Shangrong's expression was determined as he rose to his feet and gripped his longevity sword. Meanwhile, his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar illuminated the entire Melilot graveyard. He did not even look as he swung his longevity sword. Swoosh! Sometimes, a forceful swing was not used to kill opponents. After Yu Shangrong swung his sword, he looked at his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar coldly. The purple golden lotus was detached from the avatar above. Independent of one another, his avatar stayed in the air while the golden lotus fell. Even under such circumstances, Yu Shangrong did not wish to appear miserable. He quickly tapped a few meridian points on his body before he sat with his legs crossed. The instant he sat, his face turned ghastly pale, and sweat broke out on his face. The lower half of his avatar fell on the ground and vanished as the upper half merged with his body. Shortly after, his Danshan Sea of Qi underwent a sudden change. He felt as though a tsunami had broken out within himself. How powerful could a person be? He was still capable of maintaining a calm attitude even when he was so close to death. His expression remained unchanged. He was determined and indomitable. He felt as though he was being roasted inside a volcano. His primal qi seemed to be trying to escape its vessel as it ricocheted inside his body. He remained unmoving as a mountain and endured it. Time passed. After an unknown period of time, Yu Shangrong sensed that his consciousness was still intact. He opened his eyes suddenly. His cultivation base had deteriorated greatly. From the 8-leaf stage, it fell to the 7-leaf stage, and then, to the 6-leaf stage. The primal qi contained within his Danshan Sea of Qi leaked out slowly. 5-leaf, 4-leaf, 3-leaf, 2-leaf, 1-leaf. Blood started to trickle from the edge of his lips. However, Yu Shangrong did not despair from this. On the contrary, a satisfied smile appeared on his lips. Although he was gravely wounded and lost his lotus leaves, at the very least, he was still alive. Without his golden lotus, it was only natural for him to be without any leaves. That much was expected. That's nothing. All I have to do is to sprout leaves again. His voice sounded confident and lively inside the Melilot graveyard. His glory merely existed in his memories now. However, if one failed in life, all they had to do was to start over. Meanwhile, Great Yan's Liang and Yi provinces were experiencing rapid changes. Inside the Evil Sky Pavilion, Ming Shi Yin brought Jiang Ijian's letter into the Great Hall. He looked at his master seated on his throne and said, "Master, Jiang Ijian wrote in his letter that the imperial family has dispatched the army to Liang province. The nations, Lu Lan and Ruli, have also sent the cultivators over. With Si Wuya's intelligence, he would not likely miss this. We'd have to wait patiently for any changes in the situation." Lu Zhou said nothing. Instead, he looked at the value of his merit points on the system dashboard. He was deliberating about the best way to spend them. He was about to capture Si Wuya and Yu Zhenghai. Indeed, he would have to wait and see. Merit points, 17.900. Perhaps, he was already used to the system's tricks. Lu Zhou found that he no longer had a temper. He was quite calm. It's only 100.000 merit points. I'll just have to take it slow. When he saw that his master did not respond, Ming Shi Yin left the Great Hall in a respectful manner. The next day, Ming Shi Yin went into the Great Hall with Jiang Ijian's letter in his hand again. He saw his master painting. This meant that his master was in a good mood. He felt emboldened by this. He walked up to Lu Zhou and said directly, "Master, Jiang Aijian wrote in his letter that the imperial family has intentionally given up on Yi province. They sent the fourth prince, Lu Bing, to quell the disturbance in Liang province. However, Si Wuye seemed to have predicted this. The Nether sect's branches in Great Yan's 9 provinces are deliberately wreaking havoc. Currently, the empire is in a mess." Lu Zhou stopped moving his hand. As expected, these two rascals wanted to cause a great disturbance under the heavens and go against the divine capital. Could they do it? Nobody knew. If Yu Zhenghai had operated alone, it might have been impossible. However, with Si Wuye's help, the outcome became uncertain. Si Wuye's darknet was an unbelievably vast force. Even Jiang Aijian was wary of it. Needless to say, everyone else feared it as well. After muttering to himself for a while, Lu Zhou said, "Did Jiang Aijian mention anything about the imperial family's research on the 9-leaf stage?" "He didn't. Remind him." "Yes, master." Lu Zhou did not care about the disturbances in Yi and Liang provinces. Even if the whole world was plunged into chaos, it was nothing but the doings of the Nether sect behind the scenes. Without clear information, he would not easily make a move. What Lu Zhou needed was to stay patient. And patience was what his host, Ji Tiandao, lacked the most. Before making any move, it was better for him to find out more about the 9-leaf stage. On the third day, Ming Yin was clearly in more of a rush compared to before. Apart from him, even Little Yuaner and Duan Musheng entered the Great Hall as well. "Master, a letter from Jiang Aijian." Cut to the chase, Lu Zhou said. Jiang Aijian says that Princess Yong Ning will head to Liang province with the fourth prince. The Nether sect is pinched by enemies on both sides. It seems that they weren't able to escape. A hint of incredulity could be heard in Ming Yin's tone when he read the letter. Lu Zhou was slightly taken aback. He stopped writing. With a wave of his hand, the letter in Ming Yin's hand flew into his own. Lu Zhou scanned its contents before he said with a frown, "With Si Wuye's skills, they shouldn't have been surrounded this easily. Princess Yongning is only a woman. Why would she go to Liang province with Lu Bing?" Ming Yin was puzzled. At this moment, Zhu Honggung's loud voice rang from outside. "Greetings, master." When Ming Yin heard this fellow's voice, he felt annoyed for some reason. He said with a hint of threat, "8th junior brother, just spit whatever it is you have to say, and be quick about it." Zhu Honggong chuckled and said, "Master, I know about this Princess Yongning." "Go on." Lu Zhou sat down. "Princess Yongning fancies 7th senior brother. I've only heard 7th senior brother mention her once. I don't know anything else." Zhu Honggong replied, "An old acquaintance." Ming Yin's eyes widened. It's no wonder he managed to escape from Han Yuyuan. That's why he knew so much about the happenings inside the palace. That's how he managed to force Jiang Aijian to take shelter inside the evil Sky Pavilion. He had a princess supporting him all this time. I never took the cultured 7th junior brother to be such a beast. Quote. Everyone could hear the envy in Ming Yin's words. It sounded like the whining of a single man. Duan Musheng glanced at Ming Yin. Then, he blew on his overlord's spear before he began wiping it with his sleeve. With a smile, Little Yuaner said, "Is Sister Yongning pretty? I've never seen her before." Zhu Honggong replied. Ming Yin said, "Little junior sister, don't interrupt us, master. This isn't as simple as it seems. It must be a trap by old 7th. Little Yuaner nodded as though she was a chick pecking for grains. Lu Zhou stroked his beard as he nodded and considered it. He had 2 more strengthened binding cage cards, 1 deadly strike card, and his extraordinary power was sufficient. He had the means to capture Si Wuye and Yu Zhenghai. The problem was, where would they show themselves? After thinking about it for a moment, Lu Zhou stood slowly. He looked at Ming Yin and said, "If you were Si Wuye, what would you do?" Ming Yin stroked his chin and said thoughtfully, "If I were Si Wuye, I would never place myself in harm's way. However, I might just act contrary to convention." After he said this, he felt that something was wrong and added, "If old 7th does have a connection with Princess Yongning, she might actually show up in Liang province. As for eldest senior brother, it's not unlikely that he's in danger. I think eldest senior brother is trying to create a diversion. Duan Musheng was still rubbing down his overlord's spear like nobody's business. Lu Zhou nodded. He felt that it was logical. Then, he looked at Zhu Honggong and asked, "What do you think?" Zhu Honggong said, "Master, you're asking me." Without waiting for a reply from Lu Zhou, Ming Shi Yin rolled his eyes and said, "Just answer the question." He thought to himself, this oaf won't feel at ease unless he's flattering another person. I have to stop this habit of his no matter what. Zhu Honggong said, "If I was 7th senior brother, I'll immediately return to the evil sky pavilion, obediently kneel before you, kowtow, and ask for forgiveness." Ming Shi Yin was speechless. "That's it, I've had enough." He kicked Zhu Honggong. "Ow!" Zhu Honggong stumbled to the side. He said, in pain, "I'm telling the truth." Lu Zhou had no intention of punishing Zhu Honggong, but his answer was truly meaningless. Si Wuya was not Zhu Honggong, since he chose to aid Yu Zhenghai and make an enemy out of the imperial court. He must have his reasons. Also, Yu Zhenghai's departure was similar to Yu Shangrong, but there was also a great difference between the two. All this could only be resolved once Lu Zhou found the memory crystals. According to the piece of information Yu Shangrong gave him, since his host, Ji Tiandao, had sealed the memories away, it meant that he did not wish for anyone to know where he stored them. Si Wuya was the smartest disciple among the 9. If he did not know where it was, it would be impossible for the others to know anything about it. "Master, I think 7th senior brother will go to Liang province," Little Yuaner said. Ming Shi Yin turned to look at Little Yuaner and asked, "Why? Did little junior sister have an epiphany?" "Gut feeling," Little Yuaner replied. Ming Shi Yin felt speechless. One of them is stupid, and the other is dumb. Why do I have such juniors? Lu Zhou stroked his beard and said, "Why would you have this gut feeling? If Sister Yongning is really helping him out, I don't think he'd stand back and see Sister Yongning fall into the hands of the other tribesmen." "Right," Little Yuaner said. Ming Shi Yin rolled his eyes and said, "He's the fastest runner around here." The two of them had clashing opinions. However, this time, Lu Zhou agreed with Little Yuaner. Although her judgment was based on simple theories of friendship, it was usually such elements that form the most fatal of weaknesses. Since time immemorial, even the heroes had a weakness for the charms of beautiful women. Would Si Wuya be the same? Meanwhile, inside one of the Nether sect's branches far, far away, Yu Zhenghai was in an exceptionally good mood. He looked out the window with his hands on his back and said, "With 7th junior brother looking after the Nether sect, the world will be mine sooner or later. Now that all 9 provinces are in chaos, I'd like to see what the imperial family would do. Eldest senior brother, this is only the beginning. Let's not underestimate our foes yet." Si Wuya replied, "That dog of an emperor is nothing without the divine capital's imperial guards and the 10 terminal formation." Si Wuya said, "In terms of cultivation base, it's only natural for you to be the best under the heavens. Eldest senior brother, junior brother, such words mustn't be said lightly. I'm only bold enough to claim that I'm second best." Yu Zhenghai said. Si Wuya did not continue with the topic. Instead, he sat down and looked at the map on the big table before him. With the divine capital at the center, the human settlements around it had been labeled. Everything was going smoothly, so smoothly that he found it odd. When Yu Zhenghai saw Si Wuya deep in thoughts, he asked, "Are you worried about the other tribes? Junior brother, eldest senior brother, Lu Gu is an extremely patient man. He didn't even meet the emperor when the second prince, Lu Huan, and Moli died. In fact, he grounded the crown prince, Lu Ji." Si Wuya said thoughtfully, "Could it be that he's willing to see his own empire trampled upon by the other tribes?" "He won't." When the other tribes were mentioned, Yu Zhenghai was suddenly angered. He glared and said, "One day, I'll surely sweep through Lulan with my saber, and I won't return until I've killed every last soul of that foul land." "Don't worry, senior brother, Lulan rules with witchcraft, which isn't very powerful when you think about it. We'll destroy them sooner or later, and you'll have your revenge." Yu Zhenghai remained silent when Si Wuya expected him to speak. Throughout the years, he had learned how to suppress his own emotions. Si Wuya said. Mo Li is dead. If we can seize this opportunity and incite a feud, all we have to do is sit back and reap the benefits when the time is right. Yu Zhenghai nodded in satisfaction. Junior brother, in that case, you shouldn't go to Liang province. Stay here with me, have a drink, and let's enjoy the moon together. Isn't it much better to devise strategies in a tent and watch the tigers fight on another mountain? Si Wuya shook his head. I'll have to decline. This opportunity is very important, and I must be there. If Jiang Aijian left the evil sky pavilion, my sources inside the palace can no longer be trusted. When Jiang Aijian was mentioned, Yu Zhenghai frowned, the great third prince of Great Yan, and he had to give himself some nonsensical name. Aijian, I think he's despicable. That's what he is. If I were to see him, I'll surely teach him a lesson on your behalf. Junior brother, Si Wuya was not offended by such trivial matters. He shook his head when he heard this. Finally, he stood up, cupped his fists at Yu Zhenghai, and said, It's getting late, senior brother, we'll meet again. Yu Zhenghai said in a slightly disapproving tone. Are you really going? You can't be worrying about that Princess Yongning. Right, please trust me, senior brother. Si Wuya did not want to explain himself at length. He bowed at Yu Zhenghai. When Yu Zhenghai saw how determined Si Wuya was, he shook his head and sighed before saying, How about this? Let my 4 great protectors accompany you there. Eldest senior brother. Before he could finish, Yu Zhenghai raised a hand and cut him short. He said sternly, That's my bottom line. My cultivation base is already restored. Why would you worry? You, on the other hand, if something were to happen to you, I won't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Si Wuya had no choice but to say, Thank you, eldest senior brother. The next morning, the sun shone on the eastern pavilion of the Evil Sky Pavilion. Lu Zhou opened his eyes. He called up the system dashboard to check his remaining life and merit points. Remaining life, 6.769 days. All this while, he had been thinking about the 9-leaf stage and forgotten all about earning merit points. He was surprised to see that so much time had passed. When he thought about what happened yesterday, he used 10 reversal cards. By now, nobody was suspicious about the activities in the Eastern Pavilion. The amassing of life energy made Lu Zhou feel energetic. Although he reversed his life for a similar time period, there were still some minor changes in him. If he studied his own reflection, he would look no different from before. However, at a casual glance, he seemed livelier. Lu Zhou dared not use too many reversal cards in one go. If his appearance were to change too drastically, his disciples would surely ask questions. If the changes were minute and gradual, they would not be too noticeable, and his imposing air would not be compromised. After 10 reversal cards were used, he was left with 33. At this moment, the column for his life showed 9.769 days. Not bad. Lu Zhou looked at his merit points. Merit points, 17.900. It was early in the morning, and he felt rejuvenated. This prompted him to attempt the lucky draws. He did 10 draws in a row and was thanked 10 times. When he did not get any prize, he felt much more awake. At this moment, Zhao Yue's voice rang from outside. Master, the monks of the Heaven Choice Temple have left at first light. They wanted to bid their farewells to you but were worried that they would disturb you. I see. Lu Zhou gave it some thought before he waved his arm. The peacock plume appeared, with another wave of his arm. It vanished. He emerged from the Eastern Pavilion and looked at Zhao Yue. Call your little junior sister over. Lu Zhou felt that, perhaps, it was time for him to visit Liang province. Master, little junior sister has been cultivating late into the night and might still be sleeping at the moment. Kindly give me the order if there's anything that needed to be done. When Zhao Yue heard about yesterday's happenings from Mingxi Yin, she guessed that her master must be thinking about going out. Hence, she volunteered herself. Cultivating, that little girl is becoming more and more hardworking. It was a good thing. Lu Zhou looked at Zhao Yue and said, Did you sprout any leaves on your avatar? Zhao Yue appeared embarrassed. She said, I haven't. I've just entered the nascent divinity tribulation realm and have been studying the sky dagger lately. She was speaking more quickly now. I'll do my best to sprout leaves as soon as possible. Without any leaves, the difference in cultivation base would be too great. She's not the most reliable choice for my protection. He considered it for a moment. While maintaining the same expression on his face, he slowly said, "Summon your little junior sister here." "Yes, master." Zhao Yue bowed and left. Inwardly, she thought to herself, Master sure treats little junior sister well. Her cultivation base isn't too profound, and she's rude and impetuous at times. However, Master's willing to bring her out with him. After Zhao Yue left the Eastern Pavilion, Lu Zhou looked at his hair. There were no drastic changes. However, he could tell he had more black hair now. There were times when Lu Zhou wondered how his disciples would react if he used enough reversal cards and regained his youth overnight. Was Ji Tiandao handsome or ugly in his youth? Lu Zhou suddenly cleared his throat and shook his head. "I'm letting my thoughts run wild again. Master." Little Yuanair hopped and skipped in from outside the Eastern Pavilion. Then, she sprinted over as quickly as a rabbit to Lu Zhou's side. "You called?" Lu Zhou looked at little Yuanair. The little girl has grown much taller. Her appearance has changed as well. She had become more charming and beautiful. She would certainly attract attention if she went out like this. "Change into some ordinary clothes. We're going to Liang Province," Lu Zhou said as he stroked his beard. Little Yuanair was, naturally, delighted when she found there was an opportunity for her to go out. She quickly said, "I'll get changed at once." At this moment, Pan Lishan appeared in the Eastern Pavilion. "Greetings, Pavilion Master. What's the matter, Elder Pan?" Lu Zhou was puzzled. Pan Lishan had suffered heavy injuries during the battle with Ba Ma. He should be recuperating in his pavilion. Pan Lishan said nothing. He walked up to Lu Zhou reverently and made sure that nobody else was around before he kneeled on the ground. Lu Zhou was taken aback. Although he could accept this gesture, Pan Lishan's background made this situation somewhat special. He was once the greatest elite of the Clarity sect and had many glorious titles. He was never a person who would kneel on a whim. "What do you mean by this, Elder Pan?" Lu Zhou asked, puzzled. "I have a favor to ask of you." Pan Lishan cupped his fists. "Let's hear it." Pan Lishan nodded and said, "I wish to plead for His Highness the Fourth Prince." Lu Zhou was not surprised to hear this. When Pan Lishan left the Clarity sect all those years ago, he had been seriously wounded. Fortunately, he was rescued by the Fourth Prince. However, he had served in the military for many years, and the kindness should have been repaid. The Fourth Prince, Lu Bing, spent most of his time at the borders. He guarded his post well and is a respectable person in his own right. However, Lu Zhou asked in a deep voice, "Why should I be repaying the kindness you received?" Pan Lishan was slightly taken aback. Lu Zhou said again, "Moreover, I have no quarrel with him. Why do you have to plead for him?" This seemed to clear Pan Lishan's mind right away. It made sense. Lu Bing had no quarrel with the Evil Sky Pavilion. The Evil Sky Pavilion would not raise its hand against him. However, he had needlessly come here to plead for Lu Bing. Awkward. Lu Zhou walked out of the Eastern Pavilion with his hands on his back. Pan Lishan patted the dust off his garments. "Hold up. You're the great villain. Do you even need a reason to attack someone?" However, when he looked up, Lu Zhou was no longer there. A day later in Liang Province's city. Unlike before, Lu Zhou now wore clothes made from coarse fabric such as those worn by commoners. He blended in perfectly. This could not be helped. Si Wuya was too cunning and had too many eyes working for him. He had to travel undercover. Even having the old age pavilion's members with him could alert the rascal. Traveling on the flying chariot was even more out of the question. It would send the rascal running. He needed to disguise himself perfectly. When they arrived in Liang Province's city, Lu Zhou and little Yuanair were slightly surprised. There were no garrisons or ballistae. However, there were bloodstains on the city walls. Clearly, a fight had just taken place recently. The city seemed lonely and desolate now. Small groups of cultivators would appear in the skies every now and then. Thud, 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 thud. A group of men charged through the city at this moment. They looked fierce and brutish. Lu Zhou pulled little Yuanair to the side of the street. The group was running to the top of the city walls. They must be the city's garrison. "Master, they seem fierce," little Yuanair said. "Don't mind them." The two of them continued to walk in the city. In its battle-ready state, the Liang Province's city seemed desolate. It seemed too much to hope for to find an inn to lodge. Just when the two of them were looking for a place to stay, a middle-aged man appeared at the end of the street. He looked to the left and right before he whistled at Lu Zhou and little Yuan. "Old mister," the middle-aged man called out. "Are you talking to me?" The middle-aged man walked up to him carefully. He gauged the two of them and said, "You're not from around here, are you?" Little Yuan urged him on. "Just say what's on your mind." The middle-aged man said, "Liang province is currently in chaos. I've observed the two of you for a long time. I reckon that you need a place to stay for the night. Come with me, I have a place ready for you." Naturally, Lu Zhou felt suspicious about this. They had just arrived in Liang province city. How did this man know that they were looking for a place to stay? Also, Liang province would most likely turn into the second Yi province, which was now in an emergency state. This middle-aged man seemed bold. Since it seemed fishy, something must be fishy. "You can arrange lodgings for us?" Lu Zhou asked. The middle-aged man said mysteriously, "It's a mess outside. You'll see what I mean when we get there." Lu Zhou's expression did not change. He nodded. "Lead the way, please." They had to stay here for a time anyway since he had to wait for Yu Zhenghai and Si Wuya. Shortly after, under the middle-aged man's guidance, the three of them passed through several streets and arrived outside a villa. The middle-aged man moved furtively and whistled at someone in the villa. Soon enough, two men ran out to meet them. The middle-aged man said, "There's two more, I'll leave them to you." "Aight, another two. Another two." Lu Zhou had some questions on his mind, but his expression remained neutral. He stroked his beard and said, "Is this the lodging you found for me?" There were two young men. The one on the left said, "This way, please." Lu Zhou suddenly felt that this villa resembled a black brick kiln. Lu Zhou looked at the middle-aged man and said, "Does your master go by the surname Shen?" "That's right. Do you remember now, old mister?" The middle-aged man seemed excited. Shen Langshu. Lu Zhou suddenly had some vague idea about this place. "Hey, old mister, since you know my master's taboo name, you should watch your manners. If this were any other house, you would have been kicked out," said one of the men. Indeed, Shen Langshu had quite a reputation. Since the cultivation world had a blacklist, it was only natural that it had a whitelist. The position at the top of the blacklist was indisputably taken by Ji Tiandao, the patriarch of the Evil Sky Pavilion. If there were black, there would be white. The first on the white list was Sheng Langshu, who did good deeds wherever and whenever he could. He was the only one who could carry out silly, motive-less, and uncalled for good deeds, such as this one. He was the only one who remained established in Liang province's city. The underworld and the officials respected him. "This way, please." The man made an inviting gesture again. Lu Zhou stroked his beard, nodded, and walked in. When he stepped into the villa, a faintly discernible and largely transparent barrier that resembled a huge bubble shrouded the villa. Lu Zhou and little Yuan were quickly settled in. The man who led them here glanced at them before bowing and said, "The master has said that anyone who enters the villa must have their cultivation bases examined to prevent any disturbances. I ask for your kind cooperation." Lu Zhou glanced at the middle-aged man. He did not expect Shen Langshu to be this cautious. It was one thing for him to do good deeds. Why did he have to examine the cultivation bases of others? The man produced a gemstone from his pocket. When he saw the grade of the gemstone, Lu Zhou knew that Shen Langshu was not new to this. This gemstone was usually used by the major sects or the imperial family when they recruited the disciples or men. Nobody else would have any use for this item. "Master, let them test mine. I'm worried they'll be scared out of their wits by your cultivation base." Little Yuan hopped forward. When the man who held the gemstone heard little Yuan address Lu Zhou as her master, he said with a smile, "Scare us." Judging by the man's mannerism, he seemed to have experienced many things. Lu Zhou stroked his beard and looked at the man. The man added, "Many elites of the Nether sect have appeared in Liang province city. I've never been afraid of them. Why would I be afraid of you? Little girl, your master should proceed with the test." He passed her the gemstone. Little Yuan looked at the gemstone. She found it interesting and said, "I want to get tested, too. I have a profound cultivation base." This gemstone was quite precious. A mid-grade gemstone's energy would be depleted once it was used 8 to 10 times. Also, cultivators could rarely fake the results of the tests done by these gemstones. The man said, "The old Mr. first." Lu Zhou waved his arm. The gemstone flew into his hand. The gemstone buzzed and shone. A look of shock flashed past the man's eyes as he said, "Oh, it's the divine court realm. Forgive me for being blind to this." He was polite enough in all appearances, but his expression remained neutral. It could be mistaken as him being sarcastic. "Ooh, what a profound cultivation base. I'm truly scared." In any case, a divine court realm cultivator was still not someone whom others could easily cross. He retrieved the gemstone, looked at little Yuanair at the side, and said, "This way, please." Little Yuanair was puzzled by this as she asked, "What about me? I'm not tested yet." However, the man ignored her. He turned around and left. When he turned around the corner, there was a grin on the man's lips. "If your master is in the divine court realm, how profound can your cultivation base be? Little girl, you unruly and headstrong girl. You want me to test you, but I won't give in to your request. Tonight, I'll show the two of you just how evil men can be. Moreover, there's no need to waste the gemstone's energy." Little Yuanair stomped her foot angrily and said, "Master, they're looking down on us." Lu Zhou said, "It makes no difference whether we're tested or not." Oh, Shen Luangshu was at the top of the whitelist. He did every good deed imaginable. However, Lu Zhou was still surprised to see him boldly remaining in Liang province. It seemed like Shen Luangshu was not even afraid of the Nether sect. At dusk, little Yuanair supported her chin with her hands and leaned on the table. She stared at a mosquito flying before her eyes. She raised a hand and shot a needle-like energy blade to kill it. Whoosh! The mosquito was sliced in half. She giggled, Master, I killed a mosquito with my energy blade." Lu Zhou opened his eyes to glance at her. Then, he shook his head helplessly. However, he did not reprimand her. After all, this was one of her daily methods of cultivation. That was how strange people were at times. Some would do all they could to work hard and learn but would never be good at it. Some people would only need to take a single glance and would learn everything. Little Yuanair probably belonged to the latter group. Thump, thump, thump. Someone knocked on the door. "I'll get it." Little Yuanair ran up to the door and answered it. A middle-aged man in long grey robes entered the room. He swept his gaze across the room. He glanced at little Yuanair. He did not greet them at all and only muttered to himself as he nodded. Not bad. There was another man behind him. He was the one who wanted to test their cultivation bases earlier. The man said, "If you think they're good, Mr. Zhou, then, they're good." "Who are you?" Little Yuanair asked. "This is Steward Zhou. He oversees the operations of the villa. I'll be taking my leave now. Have a nice chat." The man turned around and left. Steward Zhou cupped his fists at Lu Zhou. "Old mister." Lu Zhou looked at Steward Zhou and asked, "Where's Shen Langshu?" Steward Zhou frowned. He mused inwardly. Master Shen is at the top of the whitelist. It's normal for outsiders to know about him, given his reputation. However, he did find the old man slightly rude for addressing his master by his name. He did not show any of his annoyance as he calmly asked, "Old mister, should we be direct?" Lu Zhou stroked his beard with a nod and said, "What's this about? Your granddaughter is of good quality. My master is willing to buy her at a great price." When Steward Zhou said this, there were men outside the room who could be faintly seen passing on messages. Creak, creak, creak. There were movements on the roof as well. Clearly, they were being watched. When little Yuanair heard this, she was just about to leap into rage when Lu Zhou raised his hand and signaled for her to stand down. Little Yuanair had no choice but to step back resentfully. Shen Langshu is at the top of the whitelist. He has gotten to where he is today by doing good deeds. He has quite a reputation in the cultivation world as well. Why would he have a hand in these shady dealings? Lu Zhou asked. Steward Zhou laughed and said, "Old mister, I'm sure that you're an experienced man as well. There's no need to play dumb. Nothing is simple in the world. Do you think that we'd let you stay here for free?" He had a point. If charity was all they did, even a mountain of gold and silver would not be enough. You're right. The lives of men are like straw. Old mister, you're only in the divine court realm. You'll die by the hands of the other tribesmen sooner or later in Liang province. Why don't you allow this disciple of yours to go to someone better? You'll be able to enjoy a comfortable retirement as well. Doesn't that sound nice? Steward Joe asked persuasively. Lu Zhou sighed and shook his head. The utmost white is the same as the utmost black. I was surprised, that's all. Steward Joe chuckled and said. Compared to the evil sky pavilion, Master Shen merely chose a different path. Beasts live for food while men would die for wealth. They're fundamentally the same. Lu Zhou sneered. You mentioned Shen Langshu in the same breath as the evil sky pavilion. Do you think he's worthy of that? Of course not. Master Shen has always viewed the evil sky pavilion's patriarch as his life's goal. He won't dare to claim equality with him. Steward Joe replied. Lu Zhou felt slightly speechless now. I'm an idol, too. To think that I have such a fan. Steward Joe continued to say. I'm telling you all this because you're in the Divine Court realm. Liang province is now going through an upheaval. The Nether sect and the people from Lulan and Ruli are lying in wait all over the place. With your cultivation base, the most you can do is to preserve your own life. Lu Zhou nodded. What if I refuse? As soon as Lu Zhou spoke, bam! The doors were pushed open. Several cultivators came in. 2 cultivators carried a corpse and flew in the other direction. Lu Zhou glanced at them. He discovered they were not weak. Each of them was, at least, in the Brahman Sea realm. Steward Joe, who was standing before him, was in the Divine Court realm. His aura was also complete. Lu Zhou reckoned he was in the peak Divine Court realm. Aside from these people, there must be nascent divinity tribulation realm elites as well, since this vast villa remains standing amidst the chaos. Steward Joe looked at them with a smile. If you refuse, old mister, I'm afraid that I'll have to take her by force. Lu Zhou shook his head. He waved his hand helplessly at little Yuanair. I commend you for your bravery. Steward Joe was a peak Divine Court realm expert. After all, he suddenly sensed an aura from the old man before him. It was a majestic aura that not even his master possessed. He moved backward at once and circulated his primal chi. He was just about to make a move when little Yuanair was already upon him. She was smiling. It seemed like she did not even use her energy. We're wrong. She's a nascent divinity tribulation elite. Steward Joe exclaimed in surprise. With this, the cultivators outside rushed toward them. Bam! Before Steward Joe could get a good look, little Yuanair landed a kick on his chest. Her leg shot up. Like a cannonball, Steward Joe was launched into the air, crashed through the ceiling, and rammed into the 2 cultivators on the roof. A hole appeared on the ceiling, and he fell back down through the hole. Bam! He fell before little Yuanair. He was sprawled on the floor and could not move at all. Little Yuanair was bored. She muttered, so weak.